Welcome. My name is Jerry Soonarine, and today we'll be looking at how can we multiply fractions to help me solve story problems. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at multiplying fractions by whole numbers, and we're going to see that in math story problems. So what I'm going to do is provide an example of how we can use and support students when we're teaching it to them. For this lesson, it's important to go over multiplying fractions with a whole number. Let's say, for example, we have 20 times 1/4. The first thing we need to do is to turn the whole number, in this case 20, into a fraction. Here we see that we had 20, we turned it into a fraction, and it's important that we tell students that when you turn it into a fraction, you put it over 1, where 1 is the denominator. After that, we tell our students we want them to multiply across. This means the numerators are going to be multiplied to each other and the denominators are going to be multiplied to each other. So in this example, 20 times 1 gives us 20 and 1 times 4 gives us 4. The final step is to simplify. This means that how can we simplify the numerator and the denominator? 20 divided by 4 gives us 5, and therefore 5 is our final answer. Hopefully this is helpful. We want our students to be able to know how to manipulate fractions in order to solve it, and they can understand how to get their answer. Now we're going to get into our introduction. In the introduction, we want students to not only be able to understand fractions, but write it in different forms. So in this example, we provided students with 4 different ways of writing 3/10. 3/10 as 1/10 being added to each other. Another form is 3 multiplied 1/10 to give us the same answer. 3/10 as a decimal point, and in written 3/10 in a written form. So we can allow students to try this out, write it on their own, and we can assess on what skills that they know how to do and what skills that they need support with. Here is a model response that we can have students check their answers and to assess themselves to see whether they understand it. Now we're going to get into some math story problems. For this first problem, we're going to be looking at Mrs. Onosku made 60 cookies for a bake sale. She sold 2/3 of them and gave 3/4 of the remaining cookies to the students. Working at the sale, how many cookies did she have left? So we can look at the problem, and this is where we want to encourage students to annotate, look for key information, and see how that they can work through the problem. On the next slide, I provided examples on how we can support students in this process. Here, what I was able to do is to annotate not only the word problem, but color code the problem so that students can see which step will be first, second, third, and fourth. So in this problem, we see that how many total cookies did you start with? That's important information. We notice that she started out with 60 cookies. The next step is she sold 2/3 of them. Here, we want to multiply the 60, which is our whole number, by 2/3. We go through the process and we find out that she sold 40 cookies. Here's an explanation for how we can get to that step. After that, the next part is she gave 3/4 of the remaining cookies to the students working at the sale. Here, we notice that there are 20 cookies left, and 3/4 times the 20 gives us 15 cookies. she gave 15 cookies to the students, and I wrote an explanation on how we got to that answer. And the last step is how many cookies did she have left? And here we see that Ms. Onosku had 5 cookies left. And looking back in our previous example, we see that she started out with 20 from the previous step. We minus the 15 that she gave the students at the bake sale to get 5 cookies left. And by modeling this, we see that we can provide students a visual on how to work through this problem step by step. We're going to go through another example. In this example, the Booster Club sells 240 cheeseburgers. 1/4 of the cheeseburgers had pickles, 1/2 of the remaining burgers had onions, and the rest had tomato. How many cheeseburgers had tomato? So we can give students an opportunity to use their notes, develop their skills to annotate the problem, and work through the steps there. On the next slide, we'll be looking at the problem through the same lens of annotating the problem and color coding it so that we can provide students a clear direction on what is the first step to get to the next step and so on. Here, we can provide students a way to annotate the problem. The first part is the Booster Club sells 240 cheeseburgers. We can have students identify that information. Next, we know that 1/4 of the cheeseburgers had pickles, and we can do the calculation resulting in 60 is our answer for this step. To get the remaining amount of cheeseburgers, we want to minus the 60 with the 140 so that we can move on to the third step. And here we have 180. We know that 1/2 of the remaining burgers had onions, so we multiply 1/2 by 180 to get 90. And finally, our final step is how many cheeseburgers had tomatoes. From here, we notice that we started out with 240, and we're going to combine the two types of cheeseburgers we had, combine them, and then subtract it to find out how many tomato cheeseburgers we have left. And as a result, we have 90 cheeseburgers that had tomatoes. And below we have an explanation just in case for students who might be struggling with this, understand how to get to the next step and to get to the solution. Finally, we're going to go over some summarization. In understanding how can we multiply fractions help me solve story problems, this is very helpful for students because it helps visualize the problem in fractions. It also breaks down the problem in smaller steps, and here are some examples that do that we explained in today's lesson. Hopefully this was helpful for our students, and again, practice makes perfect. Hope this was helpful, and enjoy the rest of your day.